So, Year 12, so I've had a look at your drafts for the first task, for the empathetic reportage task. And so I want to spend a little bit of time trying to unpack the criteria that I'll be marking you against and helping you to understand how you're going to end up getting the grade that you do. If you have a look here, we have all of the criteria that I'm assessing you against across the entire year. But for these tasks, I'm just going to be looking at UE2, so the understanding and exploration of the role of ideas, people and events in history. AE3, which is communication of reasoned historical arguments with appropriate acknowledgement of sources. And then these two analysis criteria. Analysis of ways in which the development of the modern world has been shaped by both internal and external forces and challenges, and also the analysis of interactions and relationships in the modern world, and their short-term and long-term impacts on national, regional and or international development. So I want to just spend a little bit of time unpacking those so that you are really clear about where we're headed. I'm going to do this for each task so that you're completely au fait, if that's the word we want to use, with the way that I'm going to be marking your work, so that you can understand why you have received the grade that you have. So I'm going to start with UE number 2. So the understanding and exploration of the role of ideas, people and events in history. So really I want to break down these last little bits. Understanding and exploration should make a fair bit of sense. Obviously, if you know how things have gone about, you understand them. If you've explored them, you've looked at how they impact on people. So the role of ideas, the impact of influential ideas. Obviously, we have a couple of competing sets of ideas. We have Nazism, the ideas of the Nazi Party. We have that running in the face of communism. And so what I'm wanting to see reflected in your first two letters particularly is exactly how Nazis were going to think about the different events that are taking place. So you might want to refer back to the 25-point program, which sets out the things that the Nazi Party believe. On the other hand, you might want to just go back and check the Communist Party. I've had a few people come and talk to me about, okay, well, what was it that the Communists actually believed? If you go back to 1918 when we looked at the Spartacists, if you go back and do a little bit of research on the Spartacists, you'll find that the Communists had a specific set of ideas which run quite differently to the set of ideas that the Nazis had. And obviously there's a number of examples of things that you could talk about. Obviously democracy is a big issue. Racism is going to become more of an issue. Capitalism and Nazism, communism, they're the main ideas that I would expect to see an understanding of, but also you're starting to tease out and explore what that actually meant for the people of Germany. Secondly, the understanding and exploration of the role of people. So here you can be looking at individuals, you can be looking at groups, nations, all the followers of the same political philosophy. That would be a fairly easy thing to do here, where you're looking at, if you're looking at the Night of the Long Knives, looking at the way that Hitler and the SS went about trying to take out the SA. If you're going to look at the Reichstag fire, for example, you could be looking at the way that the communists reacted to Marinus van der Lubbe's supposed arson attack on the Reichstag building. So you can explore this. You could also explore Hitler's vibrant personality, particularly when it comes to his speech making, and making some comments about that I think would be really useful. Thirdly, we have the events. Now, an event can be as simple as a meeting or an interview, a journey that a person might take. Obviously, protests and big events like wars and genocides feature as part of that. But that's why I've asked you to be really specific about the event that you write about. You should only be talking about one main event in each of the three letters. It should be the same event for each of the three letters. That was something that came across in the drafts, where not everybody was writing as though you were talking about the same event. And so that's really important, that I see 3 different perspectives on the same event. If you can do that, you're going to be going a long way towards achieving well in this criteria. Let's jump through to AE3. We'll explore these other ones as well. Here we go, communication. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for clear and appropriately styled in whatever form of communication has been negotiated. Obviously for this task we're looking at letters. So I want to see you using the structure of a letter. That's where I've talked about having the date, the location that the letter's been sent from, and then dear, whoever, writing the letter, and then finishing it off with a yours sincerely or a Hail Hitler or whatever it is to close off the letter. If you can write that clearly, you'll be doing quite well. I've also asked you to talk about speaking as though you are a German. Some people have gone to the effort of trying to find some German phrases or words that they could use to describe certain things. That's awesome. That's exactly what I'm looking for. The more that you step inside the skin of these people to explain the events, the better off you're going to be, and the more marks you're going to receive for this task. Obviously, you need to be sensitive to different conventions for different genres, so you need to write personally. We're not writing an essay here. We're not writing a description of all of the events. I'm wanting you to be really personal in these letters, to convey emotion, and that's how you're going to show empathy. That's the whole point of this task. Some of these other terms we'll come back to when we do some of the other tasks later on in the year. We'll jump to A1, so the analysis. Analysis of ways in which the development of the modern world has been shaped by both internal and external forces and challenges. So really what I'm looking for you to do is to talk about the impact of events, to say, okay, there was a significant event that's happened, and this is how it has changed the fortunes of, for example, the Nazi Party or the Communists. If you're talking about the Reichstag fire, you can talk about the way that Germany has been changed as a result of that event. The Night of the Long Knives changed the way that people viewed the Nazi Party and Hitler in particular. And so I'm looking for you to be able to talk about how Germany and the people within it were shaped by the things that were going on. Here we'll be looking at internal and external forces. So internal is all within the country. So you could talk about hyperinflation, you could talk about all of the threats that the Nazis faced. External challenges are all about things that are taking place outside of Germany. So, you could reflect on the US loans that were being given to Germany. You could talk about the Treaty of Versailles, obviously, as being something given to the Germans to deal with. And so you need to try to reflect on both the internal and external forces throughout your letters. The last criteria that I'm marking you against, the analysis of interactions and relationships in the modern world and their short-term, long-term impacts on national, regional, and/or international development. So, talking about interactions, that can be through culture, the different way that countries are communicating, developing, the relationships. Obviously, we have a formal relationship where Germany, or the Weimar Republic, is not granted access to the League of Nations post World War I. And then we talked about how Germany developed through the 1920s through the work of Stresemann and a budding international relationship. Germany came back into the fore through a couple of pacts, through a couple of treaties, and so being able to talk about that as well could be quite useful in your letters. So we'll be looking at short-term and long-term impacts on how Germany developed over the course of this time period between 1918 and 1934. Lastly, I just want to touch on the performance standards for modern history. Obviously, there is our rubric there, and I just want to point out the language between the A, the B, the C, the D, and the E level. So at the A level, I'm looking for in-depth, comprehensive, perceptive, insightful, critical. If you're looking for that A grade, which a number of you have said that you are, I'm looking for really detailed. And that's what comprehensive means. You know all sorts of things. When we talk about exploring ideas, you've explored a fair way, you've explored a number of different avenues. Being insightful, being able to say, okay, I can pick up on the different ways that a Nazi member would have felt about that particular event, as opposed to, well, this is how a communist would have felt about that event. It's different, and I can see that, and I'm making clear connections. That's how you show that you are insightful. At the B level, we're looking at some depth. It's not there all of the time, but it's starting to develop some complexity. If you've been thoughtful, well considered, reasoned, and coherent, if what you're writing makes sense, it's reasoned, that probably is more relevant when we write essays, but it's coherent. If I can read it and it makes sense the whole way through, I can follow it the whole way, we're looking at the B grade there. At the C level, I'm looking for understanding. Do you have an understanding of what has taken place in history? Can you explain what those events mean? Can you explain how those things came about? Are you generally coherent? So there might be some errors throughout your final copy, but we're looking really to try and minimize them as much as possible. At the D level, obviously none of us are going to be here, but some recognition, basic understanding, partial relevance, not always super relevant to what we're having a look at. At the E level, you've had a crack. That's essentially what the E level means. I would assume that we're not looking to achieve at that E level band. Hopefully you found this useful to talk through the language of the performance standards to see how I'm going to be going about marking your work. So let's think about making some changes to our letters to try and reflect the grade that we'd like to receive. And obviously, hopefully now you understand a bit better how I'm going to go about marking your work this year.